Good morning. It is August 25th, and the state of Ohio and some parts of the Midwest have gone through baking and flooding all in the same 24-hour period. So it's probably left a mark on quite a few turfgrass managers' locations. Recovery from this may take a little bit of time, depending on the amount of heat that people have gone through. If there was water sitting on turf and it got to 90, 95 degrees, for sure, that would have basically boiled the plant material and has killed it. So I would expect that this week has probably left a mark. There may be some tree damage needs to be cleaned up, and there may be some patience required in regards to water movement. I know in northern Ohio, we had anywhere between 5 and 6, 7 inches in certain locations. And so drainage and water movement is just not going to be able to move all that material. Online today, we've got Dr. David Gardner, we've got Dr. Florence Sessoms, and we got the inimitable Pamela Sherratt, who unfortunately is an Everton fan and is probably in for a long year in the old Premier League. Dr. Gardner, take it away.
All right, good morning, everybody. So today, I wanted to talk a little bit about those things that we should be doing just prior to establishing turf from seed, which I know some of you might be doing, and if you're doing that, hopefully you're doing it during the month of September. So, generally we tell people that Kentucky bluegrass, since it takes a little bit longer for it to germinate and establish, that it's a good idea to have it down by September 15th, whereas all of the other grasses that we grow, you have until about September 30th. Now, are these firm deadline dates? No. Anybody that walks around, like in real life knows that you have construction companies that are out seeding turf, in like the first week of November, second week of November. It's just that we know that after these dates, that's when the germinability and the establishment success starts to go down a little bit. So if you're trying to ensure a good, successful stand establishment, these are the dates that we like to follow. If you have a history of weed pressure, especially with winter annuals on the areas that you're going to put seed down, it's not a bad idea to throw down some tenacity with that, anywhere from 5 to 8 fluid ounces per acre. And the way that you do that is you put the seed down, incorporate it, and then you spray the tenacity over the top, then you put the mulch down. Okay. Now, after you've done that, if you look at the label, it recommends that you not reapply tenacity until at least 4 weeks after germination and or the stand has been mowed twice. Okay, so tenacity is a strange herbicide in that it will prevent everything from germinating but our desired turf grasses. But then after that, they're vulnerable for a period of time after they've become a little bit more mature. And so there's a period after seedling germination that you want to avoid the use of tenacity. But again, 4 weeks after germination, or if the stand has been mowed twice, you can go ahead and hit it again if necessary. But one of the advantages of fall establishment, of course, is that we tend to have less weed pressure, right? Now, if on the areas that you're going to establish from seed, you still have weeds such as orchard grass, remember that glyphosate continues to be really our only option for those. So, those perennial cool season grasses that we don't have selective controls for. And make sure that you do that 1 to 2 weeks prior to when you're going to seed, so that just in case one application isn't enough, you have time to make a second application. Okay, now, if you have warm season grasses like Bermuda grass, so you can tell Bermuda grass by its series of spiked seed head versus Nimblewill, which just has a single spikelet and it has longer awns on it. Both of these are kind of similar in their appearance. Bermuda grass tends to spread more quickly, but both of them will form those tannish patches in the cool season turf later on this fall. There's a couple of different ways that you can deal with that. With Bermuda grass, we generally tell people, look, it's just multiple applications of glyphosate to try to get rid of Bermuda grass. With Nimblewill, though, some are reporting that, yes, you can use glyphosate, but either topramazone or mesotrione, some people have shown to be pretty effective for removing Nimblewill prior to seeding. The thing is that, the consistency of the results there is maybe not quite as guaranteed as what you see with glyphosate. And also you'd want to check the label with the topramazone and the mesotrione to make sure that, you're not applying it too close to the seeding date. Again, there's weird things about when it is that you can apply these herbicides relative to when you're seeding. All of these are fairly safe to seedlings, but again, review the label for those specifics. And that's what I have for this week.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. Apologies, I was trying to find the unmute button while I looked panicking. Pamela Sherratt.
Good morning. Yes, Ed. Not a great start for Everton, unfortunately. I'm a glutton for punishment or something. I don't know. Got to stick with my team though. Okay, so as Dr. Gardner just alluded to, talking about getting areas ready for seeding this fall, the turf team has put together and is continuing to put together a series on our website, which is buckeyeturf.osu.edu, a series of establishment topics. So we started off with turfgrass establishment, non-selective weed control with Dr. Gardner. And then Dr. Carr did an article with some great information about soil testing. We've had one on species selection. And then last week I put together one on turfgrass establishment, looking at seedbed preparation. So go into the website, you can access those. If you go into the website, scroll down to the news section. Right now, that's where you'll find this series in the news section. Dr. Carr's working on getting its kind of own section on the website, but because our website is new, that may take a little while. But you can access this whole series, and then there's also an email address on there that you can email us with questions. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about this topic, this soil amendment topic, and I do like to practice what I preach. Whenever I do any kind of renovation in my yard, because I have a typical urban soil that's kind of poor quality, it has a lot of clay in it. My backyard in particular gets a lot of traffic, kids and dogs and entertaining, and so it can be hard. I've had pools back there, I've had trampolines back there, I've had swing sets back there. And so it's very hard and compacted, fairly low quality. And so whenever I do any renovation, I try and aerate as much as possible. And I try to add materials to the soil that will improve the soil drainage and the soil nutrition levels. I usually use a compost that has a bulking agent in it, like this one. This one has wood chips in it. So it's this particular compost is a yard waste compost. It's been mixed with wood chip. You can get all kinds of different composts. You can get, there's one, I love the name of it, called Zoo Brew, which is actually animal manure waste from Columbus Zoo. I think they put a few coffee grounds in there, and again, it would have a bulking agent. You can get spent mushroom compost. You can get biosolids, which is human waste from the city of Columbus. They have a product called Comtil. We've got lots of really good soil suppliers in Ohio that you reach out to your local soil supplier, see what options they have, what types of materials they have. I either go with, when I'm doing renovations myself, I either go with a topsoil or compost, or a mix of both. So last Sunday, so this is day 5, this is tall fescue seeded. I have kept it syringed, watered, because it does take between 5 and 7 days for tall fescue to germinate. Luckily, we've had a big rainstorm come through 2 nights ago that I think helped, but I think we're going to go into a dry period again, so I'll be going out there and syringing. But this article of mine got posted a week ago, and I have had 2 or 3 questions that I wanted to cover just very quickly. Question 1, the seed bed that we produce for seeds, is it a similar seed bed we would produce if we were going to lay sod? Yes, absolutely. Sod requires the same seed bed, a good tilth, readily available nutrition, free draining, and level. When I say level, I mean even. Anytime we're doing any grading in the yard, we want to make sure we're sloped away from the house or the property. Soil disturbance, is this the same kind of tilling? Because I talk about tilling, rototilling. This time of year, as Dr. Gardner said, we don't have a great amount of weed pressure, and so it is okay to till and disturb the soil. If we were talking about a spring seeding operation, I would probably tell you not to disturb the soil, because the seed banks are so prolific, so full of things like annual bluegrass, crabgrass. If you till the soil in the spring, you're going to bring all those seeds up to the surface, and you're going to have an absolute nightmare time trying to establish turf grasses, especially the slower types like bluegrass. So soil disturbance in the fall is okay. And again, Dr. Gardner just talked about weed control. And then the final question, and I'm not really sure how to answer this. This is probably a discussion for the turf team that we could do, maybe even do some research on this. If we're starting to add compost materials to our urban lawns, can people start cutting down on the 4-step program? What does it mean if you're on a strict 4-step program and you start to introduce compost to the mix? Compost does have a considerable amount, can have a considerable amount of nitrogen and phosphorus in it. Some of them are maybe only 1 or 2%. Some of them, like corn gluten meal, might be all the way up to 10% nitrogen. So if we start to add these organic materials, what does that do to the 4-step program? If you're using organics, the soil temperatures have to be warm enough that the microbes can break that down into the chemical form that the grasses can take up. And so you're not going to see an immediate response. But if you're putting down 1/4 of an inch of compost at a time when the soils are warm, that can be a fairly hefty amount of nitrogen. And so I know when I've used compost in the past at a 1/4 inch depth, you're going to be mowing like crazy for the first few weeks once you get that grass response. So my short answer is yes, you wouldn't be applying fertilizer as much if you were on a compost program. Obviously, this would not interrupt your, weed control part of the 4-step, the weed control, the grub control, anything else. But from a fertilizer standpoint, yes, you would not be applying as much. That's my ill-informed, non-research response to that. Like I said, I couldn't find anything on this. I think as a group, we maybe look at this topic and put something out a little bit more meaty in the future about what it means to a 4-step program. So any of you chime in if you have any more thoughts on that, but if not, then I will leave it at there, Ed.
Dr. Gardner, did you not do a little bit with some compost as far as fertility options?
I did. That was a very long time ago, resulted in a journal publication. And the interesting thing was that not all composted materials are the same as far as their contribution to overall turf health and quality. So depending on the source material, you absolutely can have too high of a concentration of things that plants don't necessarily like, and the grass will not produce the intended effect following the application of that. So yes, choose your sources carefully, although generally in our industry, it seems like most people are vending things that are known to, have a good response to the turf, produce a good response to the turf.
Thanks.
This is being recorded too. That's so bad.
Dr. Sessoms, now before we go any further, Dr. Sessoms, with your soil biological activity background, would you concur with Pam as far as the use of compost?
Yeah, actually, this is like something that I would like to work on a little bit more. And I agree with Pam. You need to wait like at a certain time of the year to apply it, to have the maximum effect. After, the problem is with compost, it's such a very large name. So what do we call compost? The origin, the source of compost, and, also, and sometimes it's like, how it's great for the land, but how can it impact us, the health, human health and everything. So I'm just sometimes, so I will just be careful of the source of my compost. Yeah.
Dr. Flo, you're going to talk about seed size today? That's something you're covering?
Yeah. This is something I'm very passionate about, seed size. So let me share my screen with you. Perfect. So can you see it? Perfect. So I think it's quite important to really discuss about seed size. So basically, what I've learned from turf grass in the years I've been working in the turf, in turf research, is that there is so many different species. They have different use, different management practice, different quality. And also they have different seed size. And I think it's here on the picture, you can see that creeping brain grass is very, very small. Generally, tall-faced European ryegrass has a larger seed size. And Kentucky bluegrass is very small too, and fine fescue are really in the middle. So why is it important? And in fact, if I move this thing here, can you see it too or not? Yeah, perfect. So this is why it's important. This is generally, I personally now for all my experiment, because I'm a researcher, I work in always a number of seeds per a number of square centimeters. And why? This is because here, if you look at these like seeding packaging, you can see that you have like different percentage of like perennial ryegrass, Kentucky bluegrass, and fine fescue, fine fescue and annual ryegrass. And so basically, because you look at the percentage, and it's, I think, a percentage by weight, and since the plant have different weights, it means that for 1 gram, you will have a different amount of seeds for 1 gram between these different species. So in fact, when you see and you look at your seed packaging, you could believe that you have one species that is dominant, one that is in the mid, and one that is not. And in fact, you are going to have far more, for example, Kentucky bluegrass than perennial ryegrass for like in your like packaging. So I think this is something that is always, you have always to keep in mind when you look at your packaging, especially when you are using seed mixture. I would always recommend to use seed mixture because they have like it's a benefit for your lawn. They can like different mixture, different species can withstand different stresses, but you have also to be very mindful of like the different species composition, and also like the different species in function, because they have different seed weight. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Flo.
Thank you.
Unshare that screen.
Oh, how do I unshare? Stop share. Perfect.
There you go, magic. All right. Just to finalize kind of seed establishment and things like that. One thing we talked about a little bit this week on the series was the idea of manipulating the soil and seeding itself and mulching. Vast majority of homeowners are going to probably hand seed. You don't have the equipment to slit seed, or you don't have the equipment to potentially put it down as a drop seeder. If you're in the professional market, that would be the recommended approach, either the drop seeder, or if you have the access to these newer pieces of equipment that allow for slit seeding, then that will be probably the preferred approach. The golf course industry most certainly has taken up these new slit seeders that are ground driven, and so they've been very effective, and guys and gals are very happy with them. But with the idea of the seeding part, the main thing is that the seed, firstly, is on the ground, and secondly, you have good seed soil contact. So when that seed hits the ground, if you decide, well, that's it, I'm done, I'm walking away, that's not going to be the most successful approach. The soil should be lightly tilled up, and once you seed it, then if you can lightly rake it afterwards, that is going to help to get that seed buried just enough, that 1/10 of an inch or maybe a little bit deeper into the profile, where it's naturally protected from the extremes of the environment, and also allows for anchoring into the soil profile if there is heavy rainfall events. Now, with that being said, everybody that's planning to seed, particularly in northern Ohio and even central Ohio, if you got 2 to 3 inches of rain last night, do not go out and try to till up your soil today. It is not going to work, right? You're going to have some patience on this one, and allow that soil to dry out sufficiently to work it. Because if you do try to till the soil today, or even probably tomorrow, you're going to just create a muddy, sticky mess, and probably do a lot more damage to the soil itself as far as structure. So it may require a little bit more time before you get out there and do it. But once you've raked that seed post application lightly in, what you want to do then is make sure that you've got some type of other protection. Now, we traditionally would have gone 5, 7, 10 years ago where we thought compost, or not compost, but a peat moss mix was okay. But lately we've kind of cottoned on to the fact that the peat moss, really good when it gets wet, but once it dries out, it's very, very difficult to re-wet it. So we would probably err away from using the peat moss based products and maybe to put paper mulch material, or if must be straw, though be careful with the straw if there's potential weed seed in there. But the idea of these products is that they are also protecting the seed from changes in environmental conditions. If it gets dry, extremely dry, or extremely wet, they are going to offer some form of protection. The other thing that you probably want to do at this time, and it may not be such a concern in Northern Ohio, but watching for irrigation practices and also making sure that diseases such as Pythium do not show up. Juvenile seed is particularly susceptible to Pythium activity. And so if you have access to a product that's got fungicidal capability, specifically labeled for Pythium, not something that's labeled for brown patch or dollar spot, but specifically labeled for Pythium, then that is going to be also something to keep in mind. Because there's nothing more frustrating to putting down grass seed and then a week later, well, 2 weeks after germination, it gets hammered with Pythium and it's dead, and you have to go back and reseed again. And as someone who's experienced that for multiple summers, I can tell you it was very, very annoying. So with that, we do have one more document coming out this week, and Dr. Carden is going to talk about irrigation practices on his portion of the series. And this is one that homeowners in particular need to be aware of, that irrigating one time a day on a newly seeded lawn is not what you want to be doing. With that, we will leave you go. A couple of things coming up. So the SFMA event, I'm sure that's why Pamela's wanting to put her hand up. That's on September 12th. The OSU OTF scholarship outing, that is on October 2nd at the Country Club Muirfield Village. And on October 9th, the ATI scholarship outing is in Fairlawn and Akron. So expect to see emails about that. Pamela, you had your hand up.
Just to follow on with what you said about Pythium and fungicides, just to let the people out there know that, you know, if they don't have spray equipment, if you know, parks and rec, schools, turf managers out there that don't have spray equipment, there are granular products that are very effective. They give you about a 14-day window for protection if you put it out with your seed. And then there's also treated seed. You can get fungicide treated seed. Again, that can go out with a rotary spreader. So you don't have to have the expensive spray equipment to give yourself some protection against these seedling diseases.
Yes, exactly. Okay, with that, folks, we will wrap it up for this week and we will see you all next week. One last thing from Dr. Shetler. No real insect issues. He did see some ants flying, however, so there may be some mound building going on. And again, that one will be patience as far as problems. With this moisture that we have had and the heat, there may be some fungal pathogens running around. I'm hoping for some grey leaf spot activity, but I think it's going to get too cold too quickly. So I'll be looking for a hurricane to come up out of the south. Everyone else is like, really?
Ed, if I can give you a tip, cover your grass in a rain tarp. It worked for us every time in Ohio Stadium.
Yeah, yep, we got some plastic that I'm getting up as a backup for that as well. All right, with that, folks, we say thank you and we'll talk to you all next week.